Okay, to begin the project, what I want to do is load in my image plane. Let's go ahead and choose the file. Load it in, select the image plane, and kind of need to get it to fit the grid. Doesn't have to be exact, but just kind of find where certain marks will line up with the way the position of the windows and the roof is. Move it out of the way, and then I'm going to create a layer and call this image, and then I'm going to assign the image plane to it, and then that way I can lock it or hide it if I need to. That's what the little R button means. Create a cube, scale it up, and check my position from that front view. I'm going to turn wireframe on, and I'm also going to use shading X-ray. It's under the shading tab. That way I can see a shade of what I'm working with, but I can still see my image plane and my wireframe. So I'm just going to scale it up, make sure that this cube is snapped to the center. I really want it to be snapped to the origin. So if you already see, my transforms are set to 0. Now I'm going to divide this into thirds. So I'm going to use edge loops of 2 and then divide those thirds into halves. So I'm going to use edge loops of 1. Create a new cube, subdivide it once, and position it by vertex snap at one of those intersections. I'm going to scale it down, go back to my front view, and then have it fit where my window will be. From there, I'm going to insert another edge loop, go back to thirds, and divide that bottom half into thirds, and delete that edge loop above it, and then delete the middle edge loop. Then I'm going to redivide it in half so that I have a nice perfect window frame and then a small little window ledge below it. Scale this in, keep faces turned to off so I get 4 individual squares, and then extrude again to inset my windows, and then extrude out, and I'll have my window ledge. Now I don't need these back faces, so I'm going to select them and get rid of them. Let's check our selections here. Alright, snap that back into place. And I can duplicate it over just to check the fit, make sure everything's looking like it should. And then we have the top floors basically done. So I'm going to collapse this, bring in my reference art, kind of set it beside me here. And once I've duplicated it, I'm going to create another cube, and this is going to be the doorway. So what I do is scale it up so that it fits the door and the frame. Go to vertex mode, snap this down to the bottom of the other cube. Delete the back face. Inset it slightly, scale it down. Just kind of use your best judgment here. Use extrude and inset a piece for that will be the door. Snap that down to the bottom, and then get rid of that bottom face. Then I can come over here, use the scale tool to align all those vertices so they're nice and even. Face mode, extrude, inset. Ran into an issue here, so I have that extra little face. And what I want to do is delete the bottom face, and if there's a line there, delete that as well. Use the append to poly tool to connect that back together, and then when I pull down from an extrude, it should come out nice, clean, and even. That's what we're going for here. Alright, so now I can use insert edge loop. I need 4 steps, so I'm going to subdivide it into quarters. And then I'm going to select all these faces and extrude it one time for there to be a little bit of a step. And then pull this out another 2-3 times. Now I have my stairs. delete these inside faces that we'll never see. And then select the columns on the side. And then pull that out. Select only these top edges. Scale them, and then pull them down. Don't need those extra edge loops, so I'm going to go ahead, double click, select those, Control Delete to get rid of them and the vertices. Don't need the squares on the bottom, and so now we have our door frame. So at this point I have most all of my parts made, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the UVs. So I'm going to bring in my reference, delete the bottom, scale that out, scale it down one more time. Now I have my stone base, my foundation. It's a little large, so I'll scale it in. And then I'm going to go ahead and raise this step up. It kept wanting to bend this way, so what I used is side view. Here in a moment. There we go, vertex mode, side view. Pull that up. Scale it down just for good measure, and now that whole piece sits out. All right. So I created a material, named it apartment, assigned a file to the color channel, and that file is the apartment texture. When I apply it, I end up with some mess that looks like this. I'm going to reset my workspace to UV, and then kind of using both of these, I'm going to go ahead and delete, get rid of that top because I have all the parts I need to be able to mirror this. So go ahead and automatic map it, and that's going to give me my UV, but it's also all these UV parts, but it's going to also give me a mess. So what I'm going to do is pull this, once I've frozen my transforms, pull the main body out of the way so that I can just work on it. I don't need all those back faces. All I need is this main geometry for the bricks. So I'm going to take these things here and I'm going to stitch all these different shells back together again. So those two lines were both going to be part of the stones. So I'm just going to place them real nice in the stone area. This needs to be rotated, and then I can position it where the bricks are. Kind of scale it up to fit. We'll revisit these later to get a little better resolution from the bricks and the stones. So just as an example of how this is going to work, I can duplicate and rotate that around, and you'll see that I have all four sides of the building. So now, working on the door frame, what I want to do is take everything that's going to be the gray stone, kind of pull it off, take everything that's going to be the doorway, place it over the doorway. And then what I want to do is, using the stitch tool, where I have all these extra seams, I want to kind of pull them together as a group, and then I can select these edges and stitch them together. I'm using stitch instead of sew because it will move the whole shell together without usually creating a lot of distortion. It just sort of fits to the edge. So what I basically have done is built one large shell just to be a continuous thing for those stairs. So in the reference art, there are gold stairs instead of the regular dark gray stairs. So I moved them into position over the yellow area. rotate these side pieces, scale them, place them in place. Same with the door frame. And then we have these other strips as well. Once I know everything kind of fits, I'm going to tweak some things for a moment. Alright, so I want to sew these sections together so that that's all one continuous piece. Just kind of layer these on top of each other so that because they all should be the same fits. Inside the door frame, to keep it continuous, I'll go ahead and stitch those areas. Don't have to worry about the overlap here. You're never really gonna see it, and this is such a low res texture that should work out okay in that top corner. So fit the frame back into the texture area, pull the sides in, and then all that's left is put the roof back on that, and then just pull these parts kind of into the area. So now everything's got a nice kind of stone image applied to it. So now we have the window frame. So what I'm going to do is take every single one of these windows, kind of pull all four of those together, and then I can use the snap in order to snap them right over top of each other so they're perfectly aligned. Pull them into this window area, the glass area, and then scale them to fit. And so now I have kind of a reflective sort of graphic look to the windows. So now the side of the window unit, I need to cut that apart because half of it's going to be stone from the ledge and the other half is yellow from the frame. And then I'm going to take all the pieces that are part of that ledge and just kind of stitch the three sides together so that it's all just one kind of continuous shell. And then that one piece can go over to the gray stone. Alright, now as for this frame, I'm going to go around the outside, use a stitch. Don't want to do the bottom because that goes into the stone. And then if I double click inside the window area, it'll select the hole and I can just stitch them together that way. Now I can use it all as one piece, scale it down in here, and it will work just fine. Or alternatively, I can select these edges, cut, and then overlap the two pieces and get a little more resolution off of it. It's going to leave a texture seam in the middle, but again, at this resolution, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. So with the bricks, in order to get more resolution, what I want to do is cut these two sections in half, snap them on top of each other, and then just kind of center it up in the area, and then scale it back to fit. And that way I can get a few more bricks, a little bit more of the pattern. I'm going to do the same thing with the rock area. So I'm just going to cut down the middle of that. Snap, snap, select, move, and scale. Alright, so now I have all the parts and pieces. Reset back to modeling workflow. Duplicate this a couple of times and get rid of the rock wall area. So I'll need enough for 3 floors, and then just move this back down to its original place. This is where that freeze transforms comes in handy. And snap over the window. Make sure it kind of fits. All right. Move this down. And then I'm going to use D and then hold Shift to align the pivot point, to change the pivot point. D will change the pivot point, and then if I hold down Shift, I can click on a vertex and it'll move my pivot point to that place. And then that allows me to use a vertex snap to snap those pieces together. So then I just use a mesh combine and then weld in order to weld the pieces together. Just duplicate, and snap, and now I have half of a quarter of the building. What I can do then is mesh combine it all together, and then go to my top view, snap this to the origin. Okay, so it's back to the origin, and then I can duplicate this around, and they should all still be in the same position, so all the corners should line up. And I can mesh combine this, and so now I have all 4 sides of the apartment. I'm going to select all the vertices and then do a merge, so that should have welded all the corners together. And then here I'm just going to extrude in a roof area that will, then I want to merge those vertices, so scale that down, select the verts, merge, adjust my tolerance, and I have the rooftop. I'm going to go back and I'm going to select, turn off the texture for a moment. Create a new box, and this will be the floor divide, kind of the extra trim. Just kind of scale it in, make sure it's kind of looking about how I'd like it to be. Looks about the right size. Pull it off to the side, select the top and bottom faces, extrude, and scale in slightly, and then I can actually delete those 2 faces. I don't need big polygons there that you're never ever going to see. So what I'm going to do is, once I get that snapped vertically to where I want it to, I'm going to freeze the transforms on it, so I know exactly where it is, because I'm going to need to move it out of the way to test the other trim piece. Yeah, so as long as everything snaps back, everything will line up. All right, so this cube I'm going to use is, I'm going to snap that to this top corner of the building, scale it down, and then bring this all the way down. A better way of doing this than I just did, instead of trying to pull it down and scale it, would have been leave it at the top like that, select the bottom face, and then just pull that down and then extrude at each level, because you want the extra edge loops so that when we UV lay it out, we'll be able to divide it into smaller sections. Alternatively, you can do it this way with the scaling. It just requires a little more fiddling with. Alright, so back to UV editing. So I have the 2 boxes that I made, and I need to automatic map them, but I forgot to freeze my transforms on this. So once I go back and freeze the transforms, then I can automatic map, and I will have all my sections. Do the same thing for the level divide trim. And what I want to do is each one of these corners, I want to go ahead and cut those corners, because I don't need big squares for the UV map. What I need is each little section. So again, this is more stitching together. So each one should be have its three sides, and then rotate, move, snap, so they're all laying on top of each other. Alright, so that's a good start for that. I'm going to assign the apartment material to it and then position it in the stone area. Do the same thing here where I'm going to assign the apartment material. Thought about cutting those, thought better of it, and I'm just going to go down the sides and stitch it together so I just have one long column. Move out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. And then what I'm going to want to do is cut this and cut that, and then I can stack these sides, these parts on top of each other. Get them roughly consistent, and then move them over to the gray section as well. Alright, so once that's done, just want to line these trim pieces up, duplicate them. So I need one for each floor, and then I need another one for the roof, and then the one on the roof I need to extrude down an inner piece, and that's going to need to have its own UVs. And so I could have automatic mapped that as well, but instead I just grabbed them, shrunk them down, and then just placed them in here. It's a very thin strip that's probably not that noticeable. And then to the roof, select the center vertex, convert that to a face mode, grow the selection, and then automatic map that, and it should give you just one cube. The main idea again with that is I could select all those faces, or I could again vertex to face. That works pretty well. The door was still a little small. I noticed it on the map, so I need to go ahead and adjust its UVs and make a proper selection to fit the size of the door. Now if I combine all this together, oh, trim piece, yes, need to duplicate and snap that to each side. Alright, looks complete to me. Let's hide the wireframe. You can kind of compare and contrast. I hope that was helpful.